Today I'll be upgrading the brakes and adjusting the suspension. Firstly, I'm going to safely jack up my Golf. The jacking point on a Golf is just behind the front wheel. On Golfs, the jacking point is a very common area for it to rust, so be careful when trying to lift it. As you can see, my Golf is very stiff and didn't take very long to come off the floor. I'm now going to put an axle stand underneath it just to make sure that it doesn't fall down on me. I'm placing the axle stand on my subframe as it's very clean and will support the vehicle nice and safely. I'm using an impact gun to get the wheels off as it's a quick method. The wheels that are on my Golf currently fit multiple different vehicles. I'm making a mental note of which holes the wheel bolts go in so I can put them back in the right place. The wheel is removed and the brakes are revealed. The red ring is just an adapter ring to fit the wheels properly to my hubs. The brakes that are currently on the car are the standard ones. Once the car is running, I'm sure they will not be up to scratch, so I'm replacing them with 8-valve GTI discs and EBC yellow stuff brake pads. Removing the brakes on a Golf is fairly straightforward. There is a small Torx bit on the front of the disc to hold it to the hub and 2 Allen key bolts holding the caliper on. Once the 2 Allen key bolts are removed, I can wiggle the caliper off. Because I removed the Torx bit earlier, the disc now just falls off as well. So here I'm just cleaning up the hub with a wire brush to make sure the discs and the brake pads sit perfectly when I come to refit them. This is the new GTI disc. The reason I'm putting it on is because the disc itself is vented compared to the solid ones I had on before. Here I'm refitting the Torx bit, but I'm not doing it up very tight as these have a very common tendency to snap. So here I'm fitting the brake pads and the brake pad retaining spring to make sure the brake pads don't pop out or make a rattling noise. I was recommended the EBC yellow stuff brake pads because they are better for track days apparently, which is what I'm intending to use this car for. I'm now going to push the piston back in the caliper. Because of where I was braking before on the old pads, it is extended to push them against the disc. Before doing this, make sure that you remove the cap on the brake fluid bottle and cover it with something, as brake fluid will damage the paint. I'm using a piston wind back tool to do this as it makes the job much easier. This just sits against the face of the piston and the inside of the caliper and squeezes it back slowly. Once the piston was pushed all the way back in, I could refit it to the hub. I had a little bit of trouble with this because these are GTI pads and discs, so they were slightly different to the CL ones. I had to remove a little bit of sound deadening on the pad to make sure it fitted. Once the caliper fitted over the pads properly, I could re-bolt it up using the 2 Allen key bolts I'd removed earlier. These are different between top and bottom, the bottom being longer than the top. I found that the suspension as I had it before was far too low, therefore I'm measuring the gap currently and raising it up by about 20mm. I will measure it afterwards so I can replicate it on the other side. Adjusting these coilovers is very simple. There is a C-spanner that comes with them, and you crack the bottom lock nut off and spin it down, and then spin the top one up to raise it up and down to lower it. Make sure once you've got the desired ride height to re-lock the bottom lock nut to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Once I was happy with the ride height I had selected, I refitted the wheel and lowered the car back down to the floor. Make sure when the car is back on the floor that you torque the wheels back up to their correct torque setting. I will be removing these wheels again before it will go anywhere, so I didn't do this. I'm doing the wheel bolts up opposite as it makes sure the wheel will sit flush against the hub. Once the wheel is on, I remove the axle stand and lowered the car back down to the floor to check the ride height. Much better. Okay.